This is the Big Fish Cares Podcast. Big Fish Cares Podcast. And here's your host, Benny Fisher.
All right, folks, I am really excited about today's guest. This is going to be the first part of a 6-part series that we're going to do this year. It's my EOS coach, Ken Kooistra, is with us today. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
It's good to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here this morning.
So I know a lot of people that are listening. We have people of all walks of life, mostly fans of Big Fish, the person. So some of them aren't into business as much as we are. But I find that this is going to be interesting, that what we talk about today, because a lot of these parallels that I talk about in business kind of transforms over to your life. And I feel like a lot of things I've learned about EOS, you can do at home. It doesn't have to be as detailed. You don't have to have a marketing strategy at home, but you should have a vision for your life.
Absolutely.
And we're gonna cover that today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your journey? Tell us how you grew up, your childhood, all the way through the last 40 years of business.
Absolutely. So I started out in business really young, so I was about 19 years old. First business while working at a local garden center. Got married at a young age, so my wife and I found out quickly that we needed money. So working like crazy at a local garden center, I decided to design a full line of lawn and garden products, which quickly turned into a manufacturing company, 70 people, 3 shifts. And quite frankly, I wasn't having any fun doing that. So after I did that for a while, I actually sold that business and started a new business quite quickly in the same industry, but this time I was importing product from countries like China, Germany, France, Mexico, shipping all over North America. And I did that for several years. We got really, really good at it, but finally sold that company as well. And then I was having lunch with a friend of mine him and I were always talking business, always talking about the next great business book. And then I always wondered how he, while he ran a successful company, always had just a lot of extra time on his hands. He was able to do many more things than just his own business. And he told me that day that he ran his business on EOS. And at that time, I had no clue what EOS was. And
is it like premium octane or something?
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was wondering. So he explained to me, and we actually went to his office after that because I became so interested in it. And he just walked me through what he was doing with his EOS coach. And he handed me a traction book that day. And following Saturday morning, I woke up early, got a cup of coffee, and just dove into that book. And quite frankly, it just set me back in my seat because I wondered, where was this book 20 years ago? I mean, all the things I was reading, I had never done in my businesses. And it was really an emotional day for me because of all the things I was reading and could have done better in the businesses I had. But anyway, from that day forward, I decided I'm going to be part of this. It was that big of a deal to me that this amazing book with all these things that could be put into other companies to help them really get what they want from their businesses. And so I jumped into EOS, and the rest of it's pretty much history. I'm now an EOS implementer after a few years of doing this. It's just been an amazing ride.
How long ago did you read the book?
Well, I've read it several times since the first time.
Yeah, when was the first time? When was that first time you sat in your chair?
About 3.5 years ago.
And you were pretty much retired by then, right?
Well, I wasn't really retired, but I just had sold my companies. And,
okay.
Yeah.
But you had sold everything, and you were just trying to figure out what you were going to do next, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you had closed the chapter. You didn't have any more employees.
No.
So it was just you and your wife again.
Exactly.
You guys were probably it was probably peaceful for a while.
It was.
And then all of a sudden you read this book, right?
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about Ken. Where'd you grow up at? Where are you from?
Sure. So I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. My mom and dad were immigrants from the Netherlands, and so they came to the U.S. with one little baby girl, my oldest sister, and so I grew up in a household speaking 2 languages, and so that was interesting. So throughout and today still, my mom still speaks Dutch to me. She's 95 years old today, and it's just been an amazing. I had a wonderful family life growing up, just a great family, 6 kids, and it was. I just always remember good things. I don't really remember anything bad.
Yeah, like that all-American childhood.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, like on Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm
Yeah.
I'm watching the reruns right now, and I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that's Ken.
Yeah.
And then thinking about the immigrant family, thinking about all the hard work ethic and like the good values that you guys probably had.
Yeah.
And
My mom and dad raised 6 kids to really work hard, and always kind of telling us, do the right thing. But I can always remember, every evening sitting around the kitchen table together eating dinner. So that was really an amazing thing because of today. If you compare families today, that just the time, everybody's in a hurry.
Oh yeah, we don't do it.
We don't do that anymore.
I mean, I grew up when we did it like that because my mom grew up like that. But that was only 25 years ago. I remember 4 o'clock is what time we had dinner. Dad would get home at 4. Dinner would be from 4 to like 5. And we weren't allowed back in the kitchen after that.
Yeah.
We either had to be outside playing or finishing up our homework.
Yeah.
And that was it. There was no going back in because we probably couldn't afford to feed us, because we would probably just keep eating. But so, yeah, it's there's a lot to dive into with EOS. Let's talk about the EOS overview. And what we're doing here today is we're going to just talk about one key component of EOS. There's really 6 components. If you guys remember playing Trivial Pursuit and think about like a pie, and in the middle is like your business, and then there's like 6 pieces of the pie. And the first one is vision, which was what we're going to dive in deeper today. Just give me a quick overview on vision.
So just getting the vision right in your company is just getting all the people in the company on the same page, everybody rowing in the same direction, and just everybody understanding what the vision is. So it's wonderful to have a vision in your company, but then to also have everyone in the company, and I mean everyone, understanding what that vision is, and that's typically not the case in most companies. People are just, if you ask employees, hey, what's the vision for this company? They just kind of maybe would give you that blank stare and say, well, I'm just here to work, or they just don't really truly understand it and want to be part of it. So,
and I feel like as a business owner and entrepreneur, if you would have asked me that 3 or 4 years ago, I would have been able to come up with some type of answer, but it would have been a little bit surface level, and it probably would have been not as intensely thought out as it is today. And I feel like for the business owners listening, it's like we have those ideas in our head, and they're almost like fleeting thoughts while you're in the middle of working and you're getting your hands dirty and you're in the dirt, and you don't have time to be in the clouds. You're literally in the dirt doing the work, and you get so busy being busy. Sometimes you forget. Like I remember sometimes you forget, like, well, why am I doing this again? Like I feel like I could go work at McDonald's and like have a nice life, like after all the problems you had to deal with. So vision's the first thing, and I think that's a huge thing for the business owner to really get understood, because once they feel that and they go through the process of figuring out what the vision is first, like them, and then figuring out how they want to share that, especially with their leadership team, or, maybe if they're only 2 employees, maybe they're their next employee, right? You have to like almost like share what you just realized about yourself, so then that way everybody knows about it. And I feel like even at our company, we've been doing EOS for 16 months, almost 18 months, and I still wonder, and I'm doing it every quarter, and I'm sharing it, and I'm talking about it consistently, and I'm like, I'm trying to live EOS pure, and sometimes it still struggles. So I can only imagine. I remember what it was like. No one knew everyone's just coming to work for a paycheck. Sure. And when you make it more than that, that's when the magic starts to happen.
Right.
So the next component's people. Out of the 6, other than vision, people is my favorite one. Tell me about people.
So the people component is basically getting the right people in the right seats. So every company we want to get great people, but that means different things to different companies. So what we always try to do is work with our clients to get the great people for their individual company, their particular company. Right people is people that share your core values, the kind of people you want to be surrounded with. And so we use those core values to just to help us get those people knowing that they are the right people. We share the core values with them, but we want to make sure that they are people that fit our culture. So we also use those core values to basically reward. We want to make sure people understand where they're at with their core values. And so we use them to reward and to also kind of repel people that don't fit our culture. We want to make sure that they're the right fit. And then right people, those are the people that are great at their job. They have the God-given ability to do their job right every time. They have the training, the skills. And so right people, right seats, you really need to have both of those pieces to have the right people in your company.
It's kind of like I feel like Jim Collins said this in his book, right? Good to Great.
Exactly.
He talked about the bus, and like the bus is heading somewhere. You just want to make sure that you know who's supposed to be on the bus first. You want the right people on the bus, and then you want once you have the right people on the bus, then you have to have the people in the right seats.
Correct.
Because you want to make sure that who's driving it is the right guy, and the person that's in the back is holding the fort down in the back, and the people in the middle are in the right. And it's kind of a good little symbol to kind of understand. I sometimes like spaceship better because I feel like we're going further. That's the visionary in me.
Sure.
I'm thinking I think about Elon Musk and his quest to go to Mars, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's a vision, buddy.
Yeah.
Because he's really trying to get out there, and he's going to need a whole team of people to help get him to Mars. And it's going to be fascinating to watch over the next, 20, 30 years, if he can actually pull it off. But
that's a vision.
That's a vision. Yeah, that guy's the ultimate visionary. And then the next one, this is where I start to doze off a little bit as the true pure visionary, is the data component. But data is really important. Tell me a little bit about data.
So data is really running your business on facts and figures. Rather than emotions that so often drive the way decisions get made in an entrepreneurial company. We're always just thinking about how we feel. So rather than that, we just really run our business on facts and figures. And we do that with a couple things. We use a scorecard, first of all. So we're putting in the scorecard a measurable, obviously a person's name, a measurable, and then what the score should be. What's our goal? And then what we do is we look at 13 weeks at a glance, so 90 days. So it's kind of our 90-day world that we put our companies in, so that we're not always looking too far out, but it's just giving us that pulse on the company that we always know what's working and what's not working. So that's really what the data is, and that measurable is just me as one of your employees, just understanding that I have a couple of measurables that I'm keeping on track for the company. That's, once again, me being embedded into the company, really wanting to be part of the company rather than somebody who's just kind of working there. So I actually have a piece that I'm accountable for keeping on track every week.
Yeah, I think everybody likes goals, especially once they're really well thought out, and then they have a team environment. And then I'm thinking about specifically for Big Fish right now, like our sales is easy to have goals. Sales is anybody can do individual sales and figure out how much revenue, how many proposal dollars, what their closing percentage is. That's where it gets easy. And then operations is where it becomes fun, because it's especially when you sell multiple items, it's we need a goal for roofing, we need a goal for siding, we need a goal for gutters, we need a goal for service work. And then when you have enough people in your organization to where you can start separating roles clearly. And we have one guy that's in charge of all roofing. Now that doesn't mean he's in charge of getting all the roofing done, but he's responsible for making sure that we get $8 million worth of roofing done. Now that might take 4 or 5 guys at $2 million each, and he might be one of the 2 million. But at the end of the day, the operations manager's coming to the head of roofing projects and saying, "Hey, where's your $8 million at? Did you have it done?" Yeah. And that's where I'm now just finally getting to, and we're having a meeting later today, to where we're going to try to push that out so everyone feels responsible, because then I feel like they come to work and they have more purpose.
Yeah, they take their part in it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think they just level up, and it's like baseball. Everybody likes to have that baseball card and the stats on the back. I mean, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's got to make you feel good when you...
Well, we always think about even being at a baseball game, if you see the scoreboard, and if that scoreboard would all of a sudden go out and you're sitting there with your friends and you don't know what the score is, we don't know what inning it is, we don't know.
Yeah, you go get popcorn and beer, and next thing you know, you're walking out the game what just happened?
Yeah, we just lose interest. So it really engages people to be part of the company. And people love it. They just love that scorecard.
And if you don't have a scorecard, so a 3-hour baseball game can get really long. But think about like running your business for 30 years and not really keeping track of anything and just kind of willy-nilly going through the motions. And then one day waking up and being like, what the heck did I just do? Because that's what would happen, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
exactly
there's a lot of business owners that are in business because they needed a job.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, they're just trucking along, and then my favorite ones are the ones that ask their accountant how they did at the end of the year.
Exactly. We're always looking in reverse, where the scorecard is giving you a weekly pulse, what's working and what's not working, and so that's where a scorecard is so valuable.
That's cool. That's ever evolving too, folks. So our scorecard here, we update that thing every quarter, and sometimes we figure out what we like, sometimes we figure out what's not as important, and it's always evolving. So we're going to cover all these one-on-one, but let's go over to the next component, which is the issues.
Yeah,
that's everyone's favorite one, right?
Just solving and knocking out all those issues, just knocking them out of the park, making them go away forever for the greater long-term good of your company. That's what makes great companies, when you're able to take your issues and just weekly solve each issue. And we do that by, first of all, just getting those issues out of your head and onto a list. And once you've accomplished that, you've accomplished a lot. But typically,
it's half the battle.
Yeah, it really is half the battle, is just getting people to write them down. And so we kind of instill this discipline into the company, where it's okay for anyone in the company just raise their hand and say, hey, look, we got a problem, we have an issue. And then what we need to do then is then teach our people how to solve those. And we do that with something we call IDS. So we identify the issue at the root. And so we don't just start discussing it, okay, which is the DIDS, is I is identify, D is discuss, and S is solve. And so when we're identifying, we just kind of hold back and we really find what's the root cause of this issue. And we just make sure we know that. And then we move to discuss it briefly, making sure that we're not politicking and nobody's repeating themselves. And we're just move to discuss it, and then we move to solve it. And once we do that, we just cross it off the list for the greater good of the company. Just move it off forever. So many people get into a meeting and they find that when they bring up an issue, they think, oh, didn't we talk about this last week, or was it 2 weeks ago? And the reality is that we continually discuss the same issues, and rarely do people ever solve anything. And so when we teach our people to IDS, they really truly get into the issue, solve it once and for all, and cross it off the list. We really take 3 at a time, kind of prioritize the top 3. We do 3, we erase those 3 and do 3 more.
I'm so excited about that episode. That episode, like, even if you don't get into EOS, you can learn a lot from that episode. And you can use that at home with your spouse. You can use that with your kids. You can use that with anybody. That whole that whole page, man, has got so much good stuff in it.
What happens is it becomes a habit. And it's a great habit, because every time you run into something in your mind, you just simply start IDSing it. So it's whatever it happens to be. You may have a problem with your automobile at home, and you may IDS that. Maybe I should get a new one. Maybe I shouldn't. You just kind of put it out there, find out what the root cause of whatever those issues are in your company, in your family, whatever it is. It just becomes a great habit, a great way to solve issues.
And most people just like to talk about the symptoms, but we're going to get into that. I don't want to get too much into that. So the next component's process, which for me is really like, it's my least favorite. But it's becoming my most favorite. Yeah. If anybody understands who I am as a human, never would you call me a process guy. That's not how I got here. Definitely didn't get here by awesome processes. But now that we're putting the processes in, holy cow. Like, I don't feel like there's as much stress because everything's documented now.
Yeah.
There's a playbook. If somebody doesn't show up tomorrow, guess what? We can just hand that playbook to the next guy. Talk to us about process a little bit.
Yeah, so every company has basically a handful of core processes. You have things like HR, and you have finance department. You'll have accounts payable, accounts receivable. You'll have a customer service, a couple of operations, many different kinds of
the sales process, which is my favorite one.
Yeah. So we basically take those processes, and then what we do is we work together to document what basically all the steps are in the process, and we document with EOS at a high level. We call it the 20-80 approach. So we document 20% of the steps to get us 80% of the way there. The reason we're able to do that is because in the people component, we've got right people, people that GWC. When you say GWC, they get it, they want it, and they have the capacity. So when we start with those people, we've worked to get good people working for us, then when we give them the process, we don't have to give them a 700-page SOP manual that typically sits on the top shelf.
No one's going to read that.
Nobody's ever going to open it.
No one's going to read it. Especially guys like me ain't going to read that. Yeah.
Exactly. So what we do is we document it at a high level, 20-80 approach, and really get to the basic steps. Gets us basically 20%, gets us 80% of the way there. And that's typically the easiest and best way. And that's really the way to scale your company once you have those processes documented. And then the next part of that is followed by all. So we say documented and then followed by all. Followed by all is anybody who ever touches one of those processes has to be trained to do it the right way. So at this company, at the Big Fish Company, they do it the Big Fish way. So that's what our documents and our processes are called. It's the Big Fish way. So when you do it that way, everything gets done the right and best way every time.
And for you business owners out there that are listening, and the employees, right? Employees love it because they need structure. They need to know what to do next. And even though some people act like they don't like structure, what they hate more is a lack of structure. So that gives you this. And as a business owner, your business becomes worth more money. Your asset, your business asset becomes worth more money when you have these things documented, because if someone was going to buy your business, they can't take a scalpel and Hannibal Lecter and like take your brain out. Like, so they need like they need your book.
That's right.
To like do it. And I think that's what's going to make your company valuable. That's what's going to make your people like have like flow in their workday and not have to stress out and not do things differently every single time. It's going to it's going to make life a little bit easier. And then the last one is traction. Talk to us a little bit about traction.
Yeah, so traction is all about taking that original component we talked about, the vision component, bringing it down and really executing on that day in and day out. And the way that happens is we have two tools and disciplines that we teach, and the first is ROCs. And so ROCs are 90-day business goals. That's when we really create that 90-day world for your organization. And typically what happens is the leadership team gets 3 to 7 ROCs, and then we also have the company ROCs. There's also 3 to 7 of those, and then we go out and execute on those. And then when the end of the 90 days, we just come back, kind of come up for air, and then we regroup and set a new 3 to 7 ROCs for the company, and then 3 to 7 ROCs for everyone on the leadership team. But then we also, as we roll out EOS into your company, we set 1 to 3 ROCs for every individual in the company, so everybody feels like they're really doing their part for the company. And then the other part of that is the other thing we do is inside of that 90 days, we have a weekly meeting, and we call that our level 10 meeting. And what we do is we have a level 10 agenda where we really get and teach the companies that we work with how to have great meetings every week. And inside of that meeting, we also use that tool IDS. So a good portion of that meeting is really getting together every week and solving our issues as they come up, really just knocking them out of the park and making them go away forever.
That's another thing that business owners, even if you don't get involved with EOS all the way, or you don't you can take that L10 meeting agenda and that'll change your business. Like right now, if you stick to it and you understand like what the agenda means and everything like that. And that's really been good for me, because before we'd have meetings and we just talk. And
well, the other part,
by the end of the meeting, we're like, what the heck are we doing here?
The other part of that
when's lunch?
I can remember running my businesses, and we would have Monday morning meetings, and I would be stressing on Sunday evenings trying to put together an agenda. With the level 10 meeting agenda, you never, ever have to put together an agenda.
I just show up.
Yeah,
I literally just show up, and if people are putting issues on the issues list like they're supposed to, and again, we use software for it, 90.io if anybody's listening. But the employees, and I meant to bring this up earlier, employees love to feel heard. That's one of my biggest things that I hear about what they didn't like at their last job is the business didn't listen to their ideas.
Sure.
Or their problems, right? So there's their issues doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually bad. I think sometimes we hear the word issue and think it's bad, but it could be a new idea.
Could absolutely be.
And that's where we capture it. So that way, on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:00, when Jimmy's like, "Hey man, I got this crazy idea. Let's talk about it." Like we don't all have to stop what we're doing. Jimmy, hey, put it on the issues list. Let's talk about it on Monday. And when it's priority, like if it's the biggest priority, we're going to put it up there and we're going to, but it's never going to go away until we figure out when we get to it. And eventually we're going to get to it. And like, it's there. It doesn't like disappear until we discuss it, identify it, discover it, and solve it.
Yeah.
You know, and we then sometimes will say, oh, well, it's a great idea, Jimmy. Right now we have our rocks because those are the things that we're working on our business. We've already set those for this quarter. That sounds like a rock for next quarter. Let's put that on the long-term issues list. So it goes from short-term to long-term. Nothing ever gets like forgot about.
That's right.
I'll tell you, a Big Fish Contracting Company, our long-term issues list is much bigger than our short-term issues list because we got a lot of great idea people here. Yeah. So I hope that gives you guys a good overview of kind of what EOS is. If you go to eosworldwide.com, you'll see that pie chart. You'll see those 6 components that we're talking about. And before we get into the vision component and dive deeper into that, let's talk a little bit about the book that really got me started in my journey was Rocket Fuel. And that's a book by Gino Wickman. You know, he's also was the author of Traction, which is like the EOS Bible, if you will. It's about a 6 to 7 hour read. It's very it's more businessy and it's but it's easy to read. But Rocket Fuel for me, because I was having an issue because I was trying to figure out like my spot as the CEO, the visionary, like what does that mean? Like, am I doing it? Because I couldn't figure out because I wasn't getting traction in my business. So I was like, immediately I take extreme ownership and I'm like, oh, it's my fault. All right, well, what am I going to do about it? So I started reading books and somebody told me about Rocket Fuel. It was your buddy, Jim Bush,
correct,
who we met through Sales Transformation Group, Ryan Gross program. That was the guy you were talking about earlier, right? Because exactly. You're like, how's Jim like a superstar? How's he do all these crazy things? He still have time to run this multi-million-dollar business. He does all these things with church, and he's doing all these awesome things. And how does he do it all? Well, Jim Bush is also the same guy that's like, you need to read Rocket Fuel. And another buddy 2 days before that said Rocket Fuel. I'm like, all right, well, guess what? Big Fish is going to sit down and hammer that book out. And it basically talks about the concept of visionaries and integrators. Why don't you tell me your definition of a visionary?
Yeah, so a visionary, so I'm sitting across from one right now, and I am one. So a visionary is that person who just loves to stay at 30,000 feet. They're that person that comes into the meeting, they've got 30 new ideas at every meeting, and they're that person also that loves those big relationships. They're the ones that really don't like to have those tough conversations with their employees. But they're also that person when they do come into the meeting with those new ideas, what happens is that the company starts to have these spikes. So you have a new idea, the visionary gets everybody really excited about this new idea. And then about 90 days later, the visionary is now bored with his own new idea. And that's typically what happens. They can't sustain their own energy, so they've now got everybody in the company fired up about this great new idea. And then they come into the meeting 90 days later and they have a new great idea. Yeah. And everybody's looking around going like, weren't we doing this? Well, the reality of that is we do need those great new ideas in the company, but what we really need is a balancing beam. And that balancing beam is the integrator. And that integrator is somebody in my companies, in my past, I never had. So I always had 1 foot in the integrator seat and 1 foot in the visionary seat. Now what happens is that when you do that long enough, you actually get pretty good at both seats. But you still experience those spikes. You just can't help yourself.
There's a conflict in your brain.
Exactly.
I mean, you can't help it because like and back then, I'm assuming before I read the book Rocket Fuel, I had the same conflicts, and I thought I was just a bad, terrible human being. And I'm like, I'm not really cut out for business. I was almost like, I thought like, wow, like I'm just a good salesman. Like I'm a good salesman and a good marketing guy. I'm a terrible, terrible business owner.
Yeah.
But when I read that book, I'm like, you know what? There's a shot. I still have hope. Thank you, Gino Wickman. Yeah. Thank you, Gino Wickman, because he unleashed a beast.
Yeah.
Because once you realize who you are, man, that's powerful. And I was already kind of on that search for like, who am I, and like, why do I do the things that I do? And I feel like I have ADHD, and for the first 20, 30 years of my life, it was always like, yeah, that's just Ben. That's just the way Ben is. And like that wears on you for a little while, and you're like, all right, well, there's good things about, these tendencies that I have and all these new ideas and the fact that I can be laser focused for like a short period of time on something and get a lot of work done if I'm passionate about it.
Right.
Like I didn't read books in school because I wasn't passionate about it. Like my teacher would give me an assignment and I'd read the Cliff Notes and then like I'd do enough to get the test done. I didn't start reading books till I was 37 years old. I'm 40 now, so it's only 3 years, but I've probably read 40 books since then.
Sure. So the other part of that, when you do arrive at the realization that you are a visionary and you do need some help, you do need a little bit of a balancing beam inside of your company, you realize that I do need that second person, that person that can help me balance out and actually take my vision and make it real. So what happens is those thoughts and those ideas that we come up with, those 20 new ideas at every meeting, some of those are actually really, really good ideas, but we use the help of an integrator to help us balance out which are good and when should we do some of these and when should we not do some of these. But they also help us take us out of the, I'm going to call it the minutia of the business, kind of remove us so we can actually really take our gifts and use them really, really well. And then the integrator uses their gifts to run the company. They're the person that's really the glue in the company. They're the ones that really work together with the leadership team, making sure that everybody has what they need. We always say is they're harmoniously working with that leadership team. So it sort of removes, not completely, but removes the visionary from the day-to-day minutia of that. So that's really what gives that visionary freedom.
Yeah, I thank God every day for our integrator here, Rob. And when I read that book, I knew Rob 4 or 5 years before that, and I'm like, I always thought Rob was the right guy for me. I didn't know how to explain it though to him. I didn't know how to like tell him like, bro, like you're my match, man. Like you were my match.
Yeah.
But when I read that book, it became easier because I was like, hey, Rob, just read that book, and if you resonate with that integrator spot, like me and you we can make rocket fuel happen.
Sure.
And you gotta really love the details. Like when you're an integrator, I feel like you love the details. Like you don't necessarily want to go in and do the big sales pitch for a big, new vendor relationship. Yeah. Can you do it? Yeah, absolutely. Rob's got lots of visionary ideas and good things too. Just like I have lots of ideas on how I can integrate. But at our natural state, like where we're the best at is like and it's complementary. And it's not that one's better than another. That's the other thing. A lot of people, like they're both so important. They're just as important as the guy delivering the materials. I mean, like we're all seriously so important.
Exactly.
It's like, I keep thinking about it. It's like when Elon goes to Mars, there's so many parallels with that because it's like, all right, who's driving the rocket ship that day? It wasn't the guy that designed the rocket ship. And that guy, I will say, is just as important, if not more important, than the guy driving.
Well, exactly. And so with rocket fuel, that's where the name comes from, is you need both of those people to create the rocket fuel. If you have one, you have no fuel. You need both for the ship to fly.
And then as long as the integrator can keep Elon from like veering off to Venus and Saturn.
There you go.
And he's on his track to Mars and he doesn't like look sideways and be like, oh, there's a comet. Let's go chase it, right? Because that could happen. Because when you're out exploring stuff that you've never done before, like you're going to see lots of shiny objects.
Exactly right.
Man, we should do a whole podcast on rocket fuel. But anyway, let's get right into the vision. So there's 8 questions that EOS basically goes through to kind of like, especially like when you come in and you do a first day, it's more of like a focus day to kind of set the tone for what's going to happen. Right. And then I remember there's 2 full days of vision building, is what you call it.
Right.
And we talk about these 8 questions. And the first one is, what are your core values? And you mentioned it earlier. Tell me more about core values.
So core values are just an essential set of guiding characteristics. They define who you are at your core. They define what your beliefs are, what you really truly believe in. And we really work to discover those. Many people just read them in a book and say, "Wow, that's a great core value. I think I'll use that." Like integrity, for example, is a big word, and a lot of people use it. There's nothing wrong with the word integrity. We all want that word, but it's not how we actually go about getting the core values for a company. We actually work through a discovery process so they are truly your core values. then we actually go about using them. We don't just paste them on the wall or put them on a sheet of paper, put them in a drawer. They're there for us. It's a tool we use every day, and it's a tool we use when we're hiring someone. We have our core values on the table. We're talking about them. We tell the applicant, this is what our core values. So do you feel like you line up with these core values? So there's a story behind each one of them. And so we go about telling not just a new applicant, but we also discuss that quarterly with our people, and then maybe in our daily meetings. And then we also have same page meetings with our people. And when we do, we're always talking about our core values. So it's what makes right people for our company.
I think that's a big thing too. And we talk about visionaries not keeping everything inside, and that's not on purpose. It's because we're so busy trying to get things done that like we don't realize how important it is. And obviously we're all born with some type of innate value, and then as we grow up through our parents and through our environment, whatever those values are, again, everyone's got different values. Everyone's slightly different, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like your tribe, it's kind of like, it's easy to find out like if you're a good fit, right? And again, not everybody is a good fit for every company, and that's okay. It's like, I know some people that are like, when I worked in the car dealership, it was like, everyone's like hardcore closers, and like, we're all like, coffee and we're going drinking tonight and like party and like, and it's like, that's cool for them. And that was a great culture because they were all like that.
Sure.
Right. And then when you realize, man, like, well, some of it's okay, and then some of it doesn't fit me just right. And like, that's when the conflict sleeps in. And that's when you have a bad employee experience, I feel like, is because like all your core values don't match with all their core values. And I'm not saying they all have to be perfect, but the more perfect that they can become for you, this is the better employment experience that you're going to have. And as a boss, the better experience you're going to be able to have leading people. Sure. Like if you're leading people that want to be led and they want to do the right thing, like at Big Fish, our 4 core values are serve others, do the right thing, exceed expectations, and be enthusiastic. And at the end of the day, we did that exercise just to vet out, to make sure they weren't just bends. Obviously they stem from usually the founder, because the founder hires his first person, the second person. And even though he doesn't realize it, a lot of times he's finding people that are like him. The problem is they're like him, and then they actually have the same skill sets, which is really the problem, because you really want to find different people that have different skill sets but the same values. There's a huge difference between skill set and values, right. And I don't think we talk about it enough. Because like, people can want to do the right thing, but like, a sales guy and an accounting guy, they should have different skill sets.
Sure. So we all have our gifts, but that's when we talk about having the right seats. So when we talk about the right people, that's the people that share our core values again. Right seats, those are the people that are gifted in a specific area, able to do the job. The
other thing you mentioned is, and what's been working really well at Big Fish, it's the 3 parts. We use the core values, obviously, in our messaging, our branding, when we talk to employees, when things are happening that are good, we're like, man, that was a great job, being enthusiastic today. Like, and Sure. We're literally calling it out by that specific core value name.
You bet.
And Gary V, who I follow a lot too, is like, it's like, you can have whatever you want on the walls, and that may be okay. He's like, but are people actually like living that, like when they're not looking at the wall?
Exactly.
And you might use the wall to get people started, to like, and you might start talking about it more and more. But the more you talk about it, just like with a child, they're gonna start to grow into it, hopefully. And if they don't, we have these like, when you have a meeting with someone and something's not going as planned, and you look at the data. A lot of times you can look at the data and say, okay, mine is red, 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 red. All right, what's the issue? It's usually because it's tied back to a core value that maybe is lacking a little bit. And when you can tie everything to the core values, it's not as personal. Like, it's personal, but it's not like, oh, it's not what Ben said. Yeah. Oh, it's not what Ken said. It's not what Rob said. It's not what the boss said. Hey, man, like, look, these are our values. Oh, exceeding expectations. Like, you're not doing self-improvement. You're not doing training. Well, no wonder, like, you see why your numbers aren't, like, it's all a correlation of, like, if you live by your values and you really are, like, committed to it, the results the results come. Sure. I mean, it's impossible for the results not to come if you're living by the values. So when we hire people now, that's my whole first interview. Like I do the first interview and I'm literally just trying to make sure they're the right people. Like, because I'm trying to be the gatekeeper and I'm trying to save time, right? Because now I have all this, I don't call it free time, but I have all this extra time now because I'm not in the business anymore. So now I can really work on the things that I feel like I have a gift is like trying to like read people, develop people, and like I'm in charge of the culture. And I'm protective of that culture. Like, you know, I feel like I'm like the man of the house, right? And I want to make sure that like no one comes into my yard. Like I don't want no bad kids in my yard, right? Like polluting my other kids, you know, like, and it's just like as a parent, I'm thinking like, you don't want your kids playing with the bad kids down the street. And that's all this is. And it's just a way to do it. So we use the People Analyzer tool, which is a cool, awesome tool. It's so simple because you just use pluses, plus minuses, and minuses. And you can literally have an evaluation done in like 38 seconds on someone. You know, if you have 4 to 6 core values, you know, boom. And then you do the get at one in capacity with the yeses and nos. And we could probably dive into that deeper. But let's get to the next one because we could talk about values. I feel like you could do a whole podcast on values. Let's talk about the next question. What are your core what is your core focus?
Yeah, so core focus, this is what you do. So that's your niche. And then why you do it. So that we're trying to always make sure that we're not chasing shiny stuff. Once again, that's a visionary thing. Visionaries tend to do. So our core focus is what we're passionate about. So when we know what we're doing, and then we just simply need to know why we're doing it. Why are we so passionate about doing what we do? And that's our core focus. You know, a lot of people call it vision. Some people call it mission. We call it core focus because it comes from your core. It's who you are. It's really important that you understand why you do what you do and why you're so passionate about it.
And I think the biggest thing for us business owners who got all the ideas, and we keep talking about Elon going to Mars, if Elon gets halfway up into space and says, oh, look at the moon, that's pretty cool, and he like takes like a left, like that's not focus.
Right.
Focus is like, okay, cool. Hey, moon, add it to the issues list. Let's talk about it at a quarterly meeting or an annual meeting to see if it's something we actually want to add. A lot of business owners too, especially like in construction, because like they'll say yes to everything. This is a tool that'll allow you to say no, and it's the things that you say no to in business that I think are why you become profitable.
Well, what happens is you end up finding your sweet spot. So it is your sweet spot. Your core focus is the sweet spot of your business. And it just allows you, once you're focused on that and you stay there, you're always focused on that sweet spot. And when you're working inside of your sweet spot, you're typically making more money, more profit. Things are going better. You don't tend to veer off the track too far.
Yeah, focus. It's helpful, especially because visionaries aren't as focused. Exactly. And when you have this, it's like, I can say no. Oh, we're not building decks today. Did somebody say they wanted a deck? Tell that customer that we're the best in the world at roofing, that we don't build decks, but we'll give you a great referral for a deck guy. But like we focus on roofing all day so we can be the best in the world at it.
Exactly.
And like I always have been telling our folks, like it's okay to say no. It'll actually show that you're even better at what you do. You don't have to be all things to all people.
Exactly right.
And you don't have to hire every single person that comes in either. Like there's 7 billion people on the planet. And there's all kinds of million jobs to do. Let's have the right people with the right focus. And those are the two big things I feel like even if you don't do the rest of the things we're talking about, those two things will like literally start pointing you in the right direction. And the next question is, what is your 10-year target? Or no, actually before that, let's talk about the high-level marketing strategy because I think it comes off of your focus, right? So like, because you want to be able to know who you're going to target as your ideal client, correct?
Yeah. So when you're talking about the marketing strategy, that actually comes after the 10-year target, but we'll talk about it first. So
I'm not the expert.
It's okay.
That's why we have the experts here.
So it's really all about finding out who your customers are, and we do that. We simply define what we would call your list. Who are we contacting? And then once we're totally 100% sure about who we're contacting, so our demographic, geographic, our psychographic, we know who they are and where they are and what they're thinking, the rest of our marketing strategy is just our message to those people, really trying to get the biggest bang for our buck out of those marketing and sales dollars. And so when we're doing that, we're just gearing all our energy towards that market that we've defined. That's your basic marketing strategy. Inside of that, we have a proven process and a guarantee. And one of the things that we always talk about is that proven process, which is quite simply, it's a 8.5 by 11 color sheet of paper. Really defines who your client is before they even think about doing business with you.
Yeah, it's like a 5 to 8 steps, like whatever they are.
Yeah.
Keep it simple,
Keep it
know.
simple.
And at Big Fish, I feel like it's, hey, we understand what your issue is. We go out and do your inspection. We'll then present you the solutions. Then you will, then we'll schedule your job. Then we'll do your job. Then we'll invoice your job. And and again, it's obviously a little bit more detailed, and we got cool like colors and all that stuff. But customers really love it because they can see the roadmap of like what's going to happen next. And guess what? The employees see it too, and they all got to follow that same process. And when everybody's on the same page, you got a lot less issues, a lot less customer problems, a lot less employee problems. And that's good. So that's the marketing strategy. Yeah. Well, talk to us about the 10-year target. This is like my favorite. This is actually like my favorite part. Right?
Yeah. So the 10-year target could be anywhere from 5 to 30 years out. It's just simply your number one large goal for your business. It just tells you where you're going long term.
It's like your BHAG.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Your big, hairy, audacious goal.
That's what it is. And so when we finally set that, we now have basically an anchor. This is where we're going. And that marketing strategy, everything that we're doing, everything we're laying out in the marketing strategy is geared towards heading towards that 10-year goal. So if you have your core values, your core focus, your 10-year target, and now your marketing strategy, you'll just kind of, with your core values, you know who you are and what you're great and love to do with your core focus and where you're going long term. And then with your marketing strategy, how you plan to get there. And so
you start working it backwards, and that's when it starts to get fun, right?
Yeah,
because
that's exactly right.
That's like, for most visionaries, those first 4 things that we just talked about, that's like fun because you're thinking about the future. Let's talk about Elon going to Mars, right? Like he's got the right people, he's got the right idea, he knows he's going to Mars. All right, but Mars is a long way away, bro. How are we gonna get there?
Yeah.
And then you just start backtracking it, right? And then like the next thing in EOS is like, what's the 3-year picture look like?
Yeah, so you take all the things that we just talked about, those first few items, and then we really start making it real with that 3-year picture. And that, when we say picture, it really truly is a picture. It's a truly have to picture it in your mind's eye. We start listing out maybe 5 to 15 bullet items of what that picture really needs to look like. Because when you can actually see it in your mind's eye, the chances that you're going to achieve it become significantly stronger. So that's what we do. We just basically paint out that picture of what it needs to look like on our way to the 10-year goal.
And I will tell a lot of you guys out there that haven't done this process yet. At first, you're going to talk about revenue and you're going to talk about dollars. But like, who knows what millions of dollars looks like? I've never seen $1 million in my life before, like in person, like, in cash, you know what I mean? I've seen a TV show in a briefcase. I've seen 10,000. So I guess I can assume 100 stacks of those is what $1 million looks like. But when you're talking about big numbers, and for a lot of these companies, if you're $1 million company, in year 1, by the year 10, you let's just say you want to be a $10 million company or a $100 million company. Well, that's hard to visualize. And you did an exercise with us at our annual meeting, which I really loved, where it's like, what's the building going to look like? How many people are going to be here? How many parking spaces are going to be? How many trucks are we going to have? Like, you're really starting to create a 3-dimensional vision to get your whole leadership team to get, because that's when I'm getting goosebumps. Look, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. And I'm thinking, like, that's my job as the visionary, is to feel like I got to figure out how to create that, like whether it's through a video graphic, through like some type of animation. Because just saying that we want to be at $60 million in 2032, like, I don't know, all right, cool. Like, it's hard to get behind that. But when you can say, hey, we're going to have, 100 people working here, and there's, you're going to have this offices, and sales is going to have sales is going to be in a separate building, you know what I mean? And ops is going to be like, and it's like, you could start to have really a lot of fun, kind of like diving into that. And that 3-year picture kind of sets the stage for the next year. Like, all right, what's your 1-year plan?
Yeah. So with a 1-year plan, so the 3-year plan basically sets you up for great 1-year planning. So when you turn the page to the traction side of your VTO, you start to really make it real with your 1-year plan. And we basically set what the goals are going to be for that 1 year. And then we also have 3 to 7, we call them goals for the year. And we just use 3 to 7. We don't use 27. We just keep it simple. Everything's important. Nothing's important. So we just use 3 to 7 really, really important things that have to happen that year on our way to achieving that 3-year and 10-year plan.
This is when it starts to become real. Once you get to that 1-year plan, that's when it starts to become a lot more realistic. And it's like, all right, we can do this. We can do it. And the first year, it's scary. When you first roll out EOS, it's a lot. It can be a lot. It can be a little overwhelming, but I tell you what, if you fight through it and you just enjoy the process, it'll be really good. So you get the 1-year target, right? You get, like, let's just say you have a $100 million goal for 10 years. And let's say for 3 years, you have a $10 million goal. And then for 1 year, you're like, all right, we just got to do 5 million. All right, cool. Now it's more palatable, right? How many people do we need to do that, right? What seats, what roles, right? We start to figure that stuff out. And then you talked about it earlier about rocks. Talk to me about rocks.
Yeah, so you'll notice what we've done now. We've gone from 10 years to 3 years to 1 year, and now rocks. And rocks are 90-day goals for the company. So it creates that 90-day world. So it breaks it down into bite-sized chunks that we can actually achieve. And so we basically set 3 to 7 really, really important goals. We just take a step back and we look at what's the most important thing that we have to achieve over the next 90 days. And we do that for the whole company, so it's company-wide. And then we step back and we do it with just the leadership team. And we ask them, what's the 3 to 7 most important things that happen over the next 90 days? And creating that 90-day world that we're living in, that really helps us achieve those goals. And then what we do is to just get a feel for that as we're working like crazy in the organization. And once we do it, we kind of come back up for air. We kind of check to see if we're all on the same page because, well, sometimes we're not. So we just get back on the same page. So every quarter we're setting new goals for our leadership team, new goals for the company. And then eventually as we roll out EOS into the whole company, then we're able to set 1 to 3 rocks for every individual. So every individual in the company has a feeling like they have a goal that they're working to achieve over the next 90 days. And if you can try to imagine that, if you have 15 employees and each person has 3 to 7, so let's take 5 items. If you have 15 employees, it's 5 times 15 really amazing, important things that are going to be accomplished over the next 90 days.
Yeah, and I think with rocks too, like the actual rock, it's usually something that you're working on your business. It's in addition to like executing your day-to-day work. And the higher level you are in a company, like, the people at the very, very top of the leadership team, sometimes they'll have more rocks because they're working less in the day-to-day so they can work more on the big picture items. But then you have the rocks, and you also have your number goals, right? Because if you want to do $1 million in a year, you need to do $250,000 in a quarter. So on top of I might be developing the new sales process. But I also have to hit $250,000 in sales. So that's where it becomes fun because you're using a mixture of the data component to be able to we got to make sure that we hit our number goals. Yep. Then we also got to be able to hit our rocks, which is the things that we're working on the business. And I feel like when you can start doing that, and again, over the course of the last 18 months for us, I mean, think about it. That's 6 periods that we've had where we've had people totally focused on things that were unrelated to day-to-day, that are propelling the business forward, that are going to pay dividends on that 3-year picture, that 10-year, big, hairy goal. So that's awesome. And then the last one are what issues are getting in the way of all this, right?
Yeah,
it all comes back down to the issues.
It's always the last item is the issues list. And once you get those issues out of your head and onto the sheet, you've actually answered that question. And so the reality there is just instilling that discipline of finding those issues, putting them on a sheet, getting them into a meeting, and IDSing them. It's just that belief that everybody in the company has to have the ability to raise their hand, just a safe place to say, hey, I have an issue, get it onto the sheet, solve your issues. That's what makes for really successful companies.
Listen, this has been awesome. I'm excited. I'm already thinking about, again, the visionary me is already thinking about the right people, right seats, the episode that we're going to do next time you're in town. So I'm excited about that. Give me a couple of ways that people can get a hold of Ken.
So you can reach me basically on my website. The best way is you can go to my website.
Yeah, we'll put the thing in the link.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's ken.kooistra@eosworldwide.com. And you can always reach me at ken.kooistra at eosworldwide.com.
That's Kooistra.
Correct, yeah.
Sometimes it looks like Kooistra, but it's Kooistra.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at that. So
It's good.
this was awesome. We're gonna, next time that you guys hear from Ben and Ken, we're gonna talk about the people component, because the people is really the heartbeat of the whole organization. And I think people will really get, a lot of people, employees will get a lot out of this. You'll get, I feel this is how you should select your friends. You know what I mean? Like, this is how you should determine this, but who you hang out with is like, do they have the same values as you? Why are you hanging out with people that don't have the same values as you? There's 7 billion people on the planet. You only need like 5 good close friends. Like, make sure that 5 of them all have like the same values in mind, so that way you're heading in a good direction, right? All right, Ken. Well, thanks a lot for being here, and
thank you. It's a pleasure.
We'll see you guys soon.
All right.
Make sure you subscribe to my podcast. Let's go. BigFishCares.com.
Thank you for listening to the Big Fish Cares podcast.